Hey guys, today I will be doing What If Deku Was One Punch Man Part 6. Last time we left off with the end of the anime and the world's hero mission. With that being said, let's dive into the Paranormal Liberation War arc. Reminder, this is 100% manga spoilers, so continue at your own risk. In March, towards the end of spring break, all the students from the hero course are surprised to learn they are all going to the same place for their internships. They meet up with Burnin, who tells them that they are evacuating the residents of Deku City, while the heroes are at the foot of the mountains. In March, towards the end of spring break, all the students from the hero course are surprised to learn they are all going to the same place for their internships. They meet up with Burnin, who tells them that they are evacuating the residents of Deku City, while the heroes are at the foot of the mountains. Team consists of heroes such as Endeavor, Eraserhead, Present Mick, Mirko, Gran Torino, Ryukyu, Crust, Wash, the Wild Pussycats, Rocklock, Manuel, 13, Ectoplasm, and also Mirio, who has now unlocked some more of the other quirks of the predecessors, such Black Whip, which he already had, Float, Danger Sense, and Smokescreen, also increasing his one for all limiter to 50% but 60% with strain on his body. The job of Tima is to storm the hospital and arrest Dr. Izuku, the manufacturer of the Nomu, and investigate his lab. Team B consists heroes such as Edgeshot, Kamue Woods, Midnight, Gang Orca, Fat Gum, Suniator, Cementos, MS Joke, and many other heroes. Also Deku is there as the main muscle, as everyone knows of Deku's strength, so he isn't sidelined on evacuation duty. The job of Team B is to take down the Paranormal Liberation Mansion and its forces. Back at Team A, the attack begins as they arrest the Doctor. However, when Eraserhead activates his quirk, he rapidly ages, revealing it's a clone made by Twice, and the real Doctor is preparing to evacuate with Shigaraki, who is still not fully complete. Suddenly, several Nomu tear through the floor, with one of them with drill arms tearing into Doctor's clone, making it melt away. In the Doctor's secret lab, the Doctor orders a small teleporting Nomu to prepare to warp out. But just then, Mirko charges in, knocking over a door which falls on Johnny and crushes him. Mirko reports to the heroes that she has located the Doctor and several tough-looking Nomu, as Endeavor and his group continue to deal with the onslaught on Nomus in the rest of the hospital. Several heroes, including Crust, try to make it to Mirko's location, but are also halted by Nomu getting in the way. Mirko charges for Doctor, ready to kick him to see if he's the real deal, leading him to panic and remember the high-end Nomu he had created. He believes activating them now would be a bad idea due to still being in the testing phase, as even who took 10 hours to fully stabilize, but with no other option, he pulls out a device ready to activate the high-ends. Just before Mirko's leg makes contact with the Doctor's arm, she gets pushed out of the way by another smaller Nomu, named Mocha, who uses the double quirk to create a clone of the Doctor that Mirko kicks away. The distraction lasts long enough for the Doctor to activate the 5 remaining high-ends, while also praising Mocha for using its quirk without him telling it to. The Doctor orders the high-ends to destroy the heroes as one of them comes out and slams Mirko into a large tanker. As the high-ends prepare to go wild and destroy all the heroes, Crust finally arrives at the lab. One of the high-ends recognizes him and prepares to fight him, while Mirko, who survived the attack, says that she's just getting warmed up as she prepares to fight them as well. Crust uses his shield quirk to try and pierce the high-end Nomu he is fighting, which is blocking the way from the other heroes arriving to assist Mirko, and continues to resist the incoming attack. Dr. Izuku thinks about what differs from the high-ends to other Nomus isn't just the amount of quirks and the physical enhancements, but that they can also think to an extent and possess the personality traits of their host bodies. The Doctor frantically types away at his computer, complaining at how he selected the most battle-crazed villains and that preparing those candidates took a lot of time and effort. He says that artificially transplanting quirks into a person's body requires complex surgery and takes at least 3 months to fully integrate into the body, and without all for one, high-end production is very tough. He also says that at this point, Women and the 4 others barely had any sort of trial run. He apologizes for the unfinished ones he released for cutting them like this, but he needs the time, especially with no escape after Johnny and Mocha's deaths, as Tamura's process is only at 71%. After Mirko manages to pick out where Kyudai is hiding with her rabbit ears, the high-ends are surprised she survived their attack, as she explains that she used her legs to cancel the impact when she hit the containers. She jumps out and lands behind them, immediately heading for Kyudai's location, but the high-ends intercept her. She uses a super move called Lunar Ring to blow away the Nomus, but one of them rips off her left arm using a black hole quirk. She smashes a Nomu with Lunar Fall before charging at the Nomu that took her arm, who is surprised by how she charged in so dauntlessly. She tells the Nomu as she lands on his shoulders that people like him only fight at a distance, never close. The Nomu tells her to die, but she tells him only when she's ready, and uses Lunar Tigers to rip off the Nomu's head, killing it. After she uses her hair to stabilize her severed arm, she tells the Nomus that since their heads are their weak spots, she'll aim for them. She also says that she lives her life every day like there's no tomorrow for her, so when it's time for her to die, she'll have no regrets, and the Nomu will not be the end of her. Back at Team A, Deku and the other heroes are destroying the Paranormal Liberation Army, knocking out and restraining their members in the thousands every minute. In another room in the mansion, Hawks corners a confused Twice with his feathers, who expresses disbelief over why Hawks would betray the organization, with the latter showing no signs of hospitality. Hawks reveals the reason how he managed to message the heroes the location of the hideout while destroying the trackers attached to his wings. Hawks also mentions that he had to keep an eye on the sheer numbers of villains there and Twice due to Double's dangerous potential. He continues to reveal how easy it was just getting Twice to trust him, and that he intends to turn the masked villain in once the war is over. Twice starts remembering his experiences of betrayal from those he trusted, namely when he brought Overhaul to the hideout and how the encounter led to the death of Magna and Mr. Compress losing his left arm. Upon remembering these horrible memories, Twice realizes his huge mistake of trusting others so easily and starts breaking down emotionally, tearfully stating that once again his trusting of others leads to dire consequences for him and the League. Twice admits to Hawks the reason he trusted him was due to feeling sympathetic to the latter's goal of wanting to live in a free society, and that it's sad if nobody trusts you. Hawks thanks Twice and tells him that after he pays for his crimes, he can make a fresh start and start over, even offering to help him get back on his feet, telling him that he is a good person. Upon hearing those words, Twice starts lashing out at Hawks with rage and anger, disregarding his statements. Twice tells the winged hero that he doesn't care about the whole system anymore and admits his hatred of heroes. Hawks attempts to reason with Twice but the latter refuses to let anyone take advantage of his kind nature ever again. Twice then unleashes his super move, Sad Man's Parade, and prepares to fight Hawks for the sake of ensuring the League's happiness. Hawks sighs solemnly as he reluctantly readies himself to fight the person he considered a good friend. Twice lets out an enraged scream as their battle begins. Meanwhile, Dabi heads straight towards their location with a sinister grin on his face, knowing that Hawks was the traitor of the organization all along, monologuing to himself that it isn't Twice's fault, rather it's the scummy heroes are the ones to blame. Hawks slashes apart Twice's Sad Man's Parade barrage effortless. He tells him the rate he conjures his clones is incredible, but also that they decrease in durability the more he uses his quirk. Hawks claims that he doesn't allow himself to get attached and must finish this mission now that he's this deep, reminding Twice that he could have just complied peacefully in the beginning because he likes him. Twice refuses and creates doubles of the League of Villains, stating that they are his only allies, but Hawks destroys those doubles instantly. Hawks tells Twice that the reason heroes eliminate villains quickly is because a person who never gives up is a hero's worst fear, and in his own experience, someone who never gives up never stops putting up a fight. Hysterical, Twice demands Hawks stop talking and rushes at him, but Hawks pins him to the floor with blinding speed with a blade feather a few inches from his face. Hawks solemnly tells Twice that because he won't give up, he feels he has no choice but to kill him, causing Twice to claim that Hawks is no hero because he is trying to cut out the stragglers. Twice also tells Hawks that Imiko Toga once comforted him with a handkerchief when he was distraught and that since this was the second time he put the League in danger, she may not comfort him ever again. Nevertheless, he yells to Hawks that he will protect the League's happiness and creates one more double. Hawks says he'll pass the message on to the League and pierces through the double being created over Jin's face. Before Hawks can kill Twice, the wall explodes with blue flames that engulf the entire room. Dabi emerges, stating that Hawks won't be passing anything on because Twice was heard loud and clear. Hawks rolls out the scorching flames with Twice, but Dabi stomps on his head and shatters his goggles. Dabi ignites flames around his feet and tells Hawks that his sentimental attitude tripped him up after all. As Dabi tries to attack again, Hawks uses his feathers to quickly get him and Twice out of the way. While Dabi expresses annoyance, he says that Hawks' weapons have been severely damaged. Hawks tells Dabi he nearly burned Twice, but Dabi claims he knew Hawks would have gotten him out of the way since that's what heroes are supposed to do. Hawks asks if at any chance he blew his cover did Dabi suspect him, but Dabi confesses he never trusted Hawks from the beginning. Hawks internally monologues that he won't be able to fly away with his wings all burnt, but decides to move himself and Twice away from the area. Twice, however, immediately crawls away from Hawks and yells at Dabi to destroy him. As Dabi unleashes his flames, he tells Twice that with him, they can destroy all the heroes, and gives him permission to go wild and back up the others. Twice agrees and the two of them give each other a high five. However, Hawks suddenly appears behind Dabi, as he realizes he went outside with the blast of fire in order to flank him. Twice yells at Hawks to get out of his way as Dabi calls Hawks by his real name, Kigo Takumi. This leaves Hawks distracted long enough for Twice to get away as Hawks is left puzzled as to how Dabi knew who he was. Twice sees the carnage happening below him, particularly Imiko and Mr. Compress being attacked by Eelboy, and resolves to help them, not wanting the kindness he felt from them to go to waste. He makes a clone of himself as Hawks appears behind him with a feather blade, while Twice acknowledges that his life up until now had been filled with failures, being conned, and backstabbed, making for a rather miserable existence. Eelboy finally manages to catch Imiko and Mr. Compress, but as he tells them that their days of criminal activity and being a nuisance to society are over, Twice's clone appears and knifes Eelboy in the back of his head, killing him and saving Imiko and Mr. Compress. As Mr. Compress says they should get down into the bunker, Twice confesses he can't clone himself anymore, and that he is spending too much energy trying to hold himself together because he fell and hit the concrete. Twice apologizes to them and reveals that Hawks betrayed him. He walks over to Imiko and pulls out the handkerchief she gave him during the Shigaraki raid and wipes her dirty face. He apologizes one more time as his clone melts away in Imiko's arms, signifying that the original had been killed. Imiko thanks him one last time for saving her. Back outside of the building, Fumikage then notices a blast of fire coming out of the mansion, recognizing Hawks' feathers. He also thinks back to his initial internship with Hawks, when he asked him what his weakness is. Hawks answers it is fire because his feathers burn up easily. Seeing Fumikage Tokiyami's distress, Deku leaps through the window using air pressure to put the fire out and blast Dabi out the room. Recognizing Deku as a threat to his grand plan, Dabi decides to retreat knowing he could not beat him. However, Deku appears in front of him within the blink of an eye, so Dabi instinctually lets out a massive prominence burn hoping to stun Deku long enough to escape. However, it did nothing as Deku simply punched the attack, dispersing it. Observing the lack of hope his current situation is, Dabi decides to burn his life into power, releasing his largest jet burn flash fire fist directly into Deku's face, making it wobble like a bobblehead, One Punch Man style. This level of power would have severely injured any other hero, but Dabi isn't dealing with your average hero. He is dealing with the student who toppled All Might, so Deku simply brushes the soot of his shoulders, swiftly landing a simple punch to Dabi's chest, knocking him out cold and breaking a couple ribs. However, this does mean we miss out on one of the greatest fights in My Hero Academia, and the amazing Toyota Todoroki reveal, so hopefully Endeavor can make up with him in prison. Back at the Jakku General Hospital, Mirko continues her assault on the high-ends, but starts to lose the upper hand. She realizes the Nomas are wising up to her skills, and decides to refocus her efforts on confronting Dr. Izuku, but the Nomu chase after her, slashing her side and tearing off a part of her right ear. Nevertheless, Mirko presses on, telling herself that if she dies, she will die having taken down her enemies. She manages to catch up to Dr. Izuku, who was in front of Tamura in a capsule, but before she can smash it open, a high-end stabs her through her right leg with its quirk, saying she was too late, but Mirko refuses to falter. At the same time, Endeavor manages to discover a shortcut to the lab, and encounters Crust fighting a high-end, who is having trouble due to its super regeneration quirk. Eraserhead soon arrives, using his erasure quirk to shut it down, as Present Mick also joins to assist them. As Endeavor digs his fist into the high-end that had just attacked Mirko, he notes the Nomu has multiple layers of bone. Eraserhead yells to Endeavor that after staring at the two Nomu in front of him, there was a brief lag before he spotted the one he was fighting, so he has to finish that one off quickly, which Endeavor continues to do so. While Mirko continues to try and bring her leg down onto Tamura's capsule, she internally notes that the second she saw him, she instinctively knew she couldn't let him wake up. Izuku yells for her to stop, but she presses on as Tamura reaches 74% completion. Meanwhile, the high-end Nomu woman figures out that the one that is negating her quirks is Eraserhead because they were disabled the minute he appeared. Realizing he didn't touch her, she quickly figures out that he used his eyes because he was hiding them. As she wonders how the effects wear off, she finally stabilizes and runs off, as Eraserhead wonders if the high-end figured out his quirk. After getting far away enough from the heroes, Woman unleashes a dual combination of liquefaction and rupture quirks to unleash multiple shots of liquid at the heroes, which distracts Endeavor long enough for the Nomu he was fighting to attack Mirko again. It grabs her as Tamura reaches 75% completion and proceeds to drag her away, but not before she uses her super move Lunar Arc to deal more damage to the capsule, destroying the processor. Before the Nomu can drag Mirko away though, Endeavor catapults himself further with Mirko in his arms, which terrifies the doctor as his machines start to fall apart. Mirko tells Endeavor to destroy the capsule containing Tamura and to take down Izuku, whose name is heard by an irate Eraserhead and Present Mick, as they can't let Tamura awaken no matter what. Endeavor takes her aside, handing her a handcloth to bite down while he sears her wounds shut. He reminds her of the debt he owes her after Kyushu, so she can't die on him, while she replies he doesn't owe her nothing. The two are then faced against Women. Eraserhead continues to use his erasure to nullify the high-ends until reinforcements arrive. He remembered how Woman escaped his eyesight and is probably fighting Endeavor, and as much as he wants to go after it, he can't go deeper into the lab because he is currently holding 3 of them back. He yells to Xless and Present Mick to go on ahead of him. One high-end tries to stop them but is hit by a super move from Crust. Eraserhead tells Present Mick that he is counting on him as he makes his way through the lab. Desperately notes how all the equipment is ruined but not the data, and as much as he doesn't want to wake Tamura because he is still in an incomplete state, he figures it would be better than before all the solution inside the capsule is lost. As he laments how all his work with All for One was falling apart, he pulls out a switch and tries to press it while yelling for Tamura to wake up. Before he can though, Present Mick uses his voice quirk to shatter the capsule completely, leaving Izuku aghast. Present Mick runs up to Izuku and punches him to confirm if he is a clone or not, yelling at him for making his friend cry. Xless checks on Tamura and sees that he isn't breathing and his heart has stopped, and Izuku reveals he put Tamura into a state of suspension to lighten the burden of stabilization and that the container was meant to accelerate the stabilization process, support his system, and resuscitate him when necessary, all the while crying about how he lived for Tamura's sake. The reinforcements finally arrive and begin to overwhelm the high-ends, while Izuku laments how bad things have gotten. Present Mick proceeds to drag Izuku away and tells him to command the Nomu to stop their attack while also yelling to Xless to handle Tamura, which he complies, but also notices a machine that is still active due to the tubes in front of it buffering the damage, and decides to destroy it himself. Inside Tamura's mind, Tamura is surrounded by several large hands and pieces of buildings. He sees his sister talking to him, telling him that she was on his side, and later when she was apologizing to him for selling him out. Tamura responds that it's alright and that he has forgotten it. A large version of his mother appears asking him if he still wants to be a hero, and then tells him that he had been rubbing his eyes ragged and they will only get itchier the more he scratches. Tamura, as Tenko, tells her he is fine. A large version of his father appears yelling if he went into his study, and Tenko turns back into Tamura and destroys him with his quirk. A shadowy version of All for One appears and tells him to come to him. His family reappears to stop him and grab him in the same areas he had their hands on him before, with Kotaro's hand on his face, all desperately trying to stop him from following in All for One's footsteps. The last one to appear is his grandmother, Nana, who grabs the back of his head and telling him to not forget them. Despite their pleas, Tamura destroys the constructs of his family without hesitation, telling them not to reject who he is. The crumbling face of Nana watches her grandson walk over to All for One's darkness, embracing the path of villainy. Back in the lab, the electricity from the tubes wakes Jolt Tamura awake. Outside the room, Mirko gets a bad feeling that something terrible is coming. Meanwhile, under the villa, Redistro yells about his spare legs as one of his minions informs him that Gigantomachia has started moving, as the large monstrosity has picked up his master's scent. Hearing the commotion, Deku smashes through the building, punching Gigantomachia in the face, sending him flying into the air, then grabbing Gigantomachia's leg, launching him into the ground, sending hundreds of furious kicks, crippling him, leaving him completely unconscious. Back in the lab, X-Less is surprised to see that Tamura has woken up, despite having previously verified that his heart was not beating. Tamura speaks and says he is cold. At that moment, the pro heroes have already defeated the High-Ends and Present Mick continues to escort Izuku to the surface. Just then, they notice the lab starting to disintegrate, with Izuku smiling maniacally as it reaches closer to the two of them. Gran Torino charges in and quickly grabs the two as he notices how Tamura's decay has started spreading to things he hadn't even touched, which is something they didn't know about. He yells to the heroes to escape and not touch the cracks unless they want to die. Ryukyu yells to Eraserhead to grab onto her, as she carries several heroes on her back. Just as Eraserhead launches his capturing weapon to latch on, a High-End grabs him by the leg as it starts to disintegrate. Its arm is then cut off by Crust's shoot shield, but he's unable to escape the decay and dies, sending off with a smile while Eraserhead screams in horror. Meanwhile, Endeavor escapes as well, carrying Mirko and another hero. At the same time, Mirko uses Float and Black Whip to save as many heroes as he could. Realizing the decay is spreading towards the nearby city, charges up 60% of One for All and unleashes a new super move, St. Louis Air Force Smash at the spreading decay, as everyone screams to run. Despite his best efforts, the decay continues with no sign of stopping. Discovering it isn't just a shockwave, he remembers Tamura's explanation for how his decay worked, and realizes it is his doing. Back at what is left of the lab and hospital, Tamura stands at the center of his destruction on a platform above the ruins. He overlooks the destruction he caused before noticing the large machine behind him with a smoking hole in it. He opens it up and sees that most of the quirk-destroying bullets are ruined, having been destroyed by X-Less right before waking up, and after all the time Izuku spent trying to mass reproduce them. Suddenly, Tamura feels a throb in his head, hearing a voice, and is confused by the intrusion in his thoughts. Then, he sees Kyudai's phone on the ground and picks it up, realizing he now has control over his quirk when he touches stuff. He also realizes that the reason why he has awoken is because of the heroes fighting the Paranormal Liberation Front. He calls Gigantomachia and orders him to bring everyone to the city, because he is ready to destroy everything. However, there was no reply from Gigantomachia. Back in the hospital ruins, Endeavor makes his reappearance, charging toward Tamura ready to fight. However, he along with all the heroes present were easily dispatched by the now biologically enhanced All for One Shigaraki, who stood on their wounded bodies, arm risen in the sky with no damage as it all simply healed. Shigaraki then hears the voice again calling for One for All, charging towards Mirko, reaching his hand out to steal One for All and decay him. However, Mirko simply permeates through the attack, releasing a plume of smoke screen, then using a 60% One for All blinder touch eyeball crush, launching Shigaraki meters into the air, then pulling him in with Black Whip, sending a furious barrage of punches slamming him into the ground. However, there was no lasting damage as it simply healed. Despite this, they were fighting mostly evenly. Despite the power differences, the combination of danger sense and permeation allows Mirko to put up a fight using repeated phantom menaces to permeate through the ground, launching himself high speeds, punching Shigaraki. Eventually, Eraserhead arrives, deactivates his quirk, allowing Lemillion to deal some damage, nearly ripping off his arm. However, Shigaraki still had strength equal to All Might, which he used to propel himself towards Eraser, digging his fingers into Eraser's face, being pulled back with Black Whip, but throwing 3 quirk-erasing bullets towards Eraserhead. Lemillion desperately tried to deflect the bullets, whacking 2 of the 3 bullets with Black Whip. However, the third one hits Eraser's leg, which he promptly severs, preventing the spread, saving his quirk. Without Eraserhead's help, Mirko is eventually tired and overwhelmed. However, there is some lasting damage on Shigaraki. With Lemillion on his last legs, Shigaraki prepared to steal One for All, activating All for One. However, he is pushed out of the Vestige world by the successors and met with a barrage of rapid punches which beat the super regeneration out of Shigaraki, tearing off his limbs, crippling him, forcing Shigaraki to allow All for One to take control of his body, releasing all his quirks in a final attack, making Deku use a serious punch to disperse the attack and severely damage Shigaraki, incapacitating him and leaving him grasping for life in a deep coma. Shigaraki and all the injured heroes and villains are rushed to a hospital, and where all the villains are restrained and transported to Tartarus, where Shigaraki, the League and All for One will spend the rest of their life. Okay guys, this is the end of this video and series. I hope you enjoyed, despite the long delays to the upload schedule and my stupidity. Please like